All right, so folks, really want to welcome you all to this webinar today, where it's all going to be about how to diagnose go-to-market issues in a scaling SaaS business. So, Harry, I'm one of the revenue architects based in Ghent, Belgium. We've got Roy, who's one of our most seasoned architects based in Berlin, and with us we also have Dave, based in Utah. He's our executive chairman. Yeah, let's make this a fun session. So if we can go to the next slide, I would actually love to start us off with a beautiful quote. So the question is, why do we start with a diagnose? And this beautiful quote from Albert Einstein says the following: if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes diagnosing the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. I think this is a beautiful quote. For all the people out there who are married or have a long-term relationship, you know this is a very valuable rule to keep your relationship healthy, steady, and so forth. And recently I got, I experienced actually the true beauty of this quote at my private life, actually. So I have 3 kids right now. They're 6, 3, and 1. For the parents out there, when you have kids like this, your house is an eternal mess. And, I do like to have a little bit of my structure. And, this was really becoming a problem for me and my wife. And so we had a lot of discussions. And very, very often we were immediately going into the solutioning mode. Hey, Harry, I think you should clean up more, or no, I think you should clean up more, or maybe we should, have the maid come over half a day extra per week. Okay, but that costs money. So we were very stuck in sort of the solution mode. And up until one evening where my father came to eat, and he said, Harry, you're not looking at the problem in the right way. The problem is not that you folks should clean more. The problem is that you should educate your kids to clean up after them and leave less of a mess. And this is where I got another tip from a friend, works like a charm, the point system. When you introduce the point system, right, where they get a few points when they clean up after them, and if they get 10 points, they get a box of Lego. Suddenly my life changed forever. No more mess in the house. They clean up after themselves. And so that for me was an experience of this particular quote. So when you go back to that quote, you actually also you're going to see that there's not one way to look at a problem. Generally, when you look at a problem, there's going to be several levels of depth into a problem. And that is no difference when you're diagnosing a scaling SaaS business. So that's where we're going to head in today. So if we can go to the next slide. Roy, do you want to take us through what are those couple of steps that we usually take when we actually perform a diagnosis, which is the first step of scaling a SaaS business?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Harry. So what you see on the slide right now is the general steps that we take, and this is the agenda for us to take. We're going to start off in defining how do we define a problem, what the problem is. How do we collect the data, which is the second step. Then we want to understand, once we have the data, we want to identify the causal factors. We're going to go into that. Why is that important? Conclude the root causes. And again, why is that important to focus on the root causes? And again, how we implement the solution. So this is the agenda that we have for you guys today. And let's start off. Let's define the problem. So usually clients, when we work with clients, they come to us with a certain problem. In almost every case, it's growth related. Up until 2 years ago, it was all about we grew too fast, help us design processes that we don't really have. But now, as we all know, in declining markets, it's all about declining metrics, right? Whether it's revenue that is decreasing, whether it's the win rate that have dropped dramatically across the board, or either retention rates. Here's an example of like a standard quote that we get from a CEO. So they come to us and say, hey, our growth has stalled, our churn has increased, some reps reach their targets, but most don't. And generally speaking, we need to solidify our position in the market. And we'll use that as the use case for us today. Now let's spend a couple of minutes to talk about problems and root causes analysis. And for that, we will use the RCA tree diagram. So we have been giving a set of problems, right? It was a few problems. The first thing that we want is to separate the symptoms and the root causes. And why is that important? Because if we don't get to the root causes, we're just, as the saying goes, we're putting out fires, right? It's in another example, it's like treating a toothache with Tylenol. We can make the problem go away for a certain time, but it will come back to haunt us, either the same way or in other ways, because we didn't really address the root cause. So if we're using the RCA, the tree, above the surface, you can see the symptoms of the problem. The problem is the stem of the tree, and the roots, as we go deeper, we find the root causes to the problem. And let's see how this works. So these are examples of what we typically hear, right? Performance, 80% of our reps, 80% of our revenue come from 3% of our reps. We might hear something like applying the wrong go-to-market motion. We might hear of retention, that churn has been increasing. We might see that we don't have an established and effective and repeatable process to follow. And a lot of times we also hear skills, right? We listening to calls and our reps are not skilled enough to do what they're tasked to do. So let's use the chat. What you see here, the 3 questions. What are which ones do you think are the symptoms? Which are the problems? And what do you see as root causes? Let's give you 20 seconds just to try to answer this. Try to put them in the tree. What is the problem? What is the symptom? And what is the cause? Retention is a symptom. I agree. Usually when we're looking at numbers, these are the symptoms, right? This is the obvious. And also this is where it comes in, like when we're looking at predictive metrics or back looking metrics, right? Root causes are the skills, repeatable process, symptoms, retention, performance, problem, go-to-market motion. Thank you, Iveta. So yeah, I'm hoping that some of you have tried to do this in this specific case, right? Let's see how we see that. So retention, performance, right? These are the usual lagging indicators, lagging metrics. These are usually the symptoms that we could easily see on the surface. When we want to go deeper, the problem is that they don't have the right skills on the right side. On the left side, they don't have a repeatable process to follow. And the root cause, when we want to go very deep, is that they're applying the wrong go-to-market motion. Which means that if you're applying the wrong go-to-market motions, you don't have the right sellers, you don't have the right skills to sell to that motion, and you don't have a repeatable process to follow, which causes retention and performance issues. So this is when we're trying to define that problem. Now let's talk about how we collect the data. Harry, back to you.
Yes, absolutely. So that's going to be obviously step 1 when you're doing a solid diagnosis of your revenue engine. You want to start with collecting data, and there's 2, I would say, dimensions of data that we want to highlight here. I think the first one is quantitative versus qualitative data. So quantitative data, you're going to look at financial metrics, performance metrics, conversion rates, volume metrics, sales cycles, and so forth. And for qualitative data, you're going to look at interviews, listen to calls, look at email, analyze the process. Now, it's important that to have these 2 together, they work together like yin and yang. When you think about quantitative data, the fantastic part about that is that it's unbiased. There is, of course, a problem if you only have quantitative data. sometimes it's a bit difficult to put meaning to that data, and that's why you need the qualitative data. So something that gives meaning, something that can give you an unbiased basis when you bring these two together. This is really where you're starting to see significance in things. Now, the next dimension is what we call our 7 focus areas. So what you can see here is a sort of pyramid where you start with the quantitative data, you look at the go-to-market motions, you look at the processes, technology, enablement, skills, and org. This is also an important one to remember for 2 reasons, I would say. I think, first of all, this gives you a little bit of a checklist, like, hey, what are all the things I need to be thinking of? Because all these things are often connected. But there's also a second thing, is that this pyramid often gives us a very good indication of how the causality works. Very often you're going to see that the data will tell you which go-to-market motion you need to follow. The go-to-market motion dictates the process. The process will dictate the technology, the enablement needed, the skills needed. And the skills will ultimately dictate what are the kind of people you're going to need for that. So that's a good one to remember, where to look for and how to start thinking about causality in these things. Roy, over to you.
Yeah, so we collected the data. Now we want to identify the causal factors. We're starting to process the process of identifying the causal factors. We go back and use revenue architecture basics, right? And we focus mostly on 3 models, and this is what we are going to do today. The first model that we start off is the growth model. For those of you who have not taken the ROM course, the Revenue Architects course, first of all, what are you waiting for? Second of all, quick explanation. This is a model that represents the growth of how companies in the SaaS and recurring revenue businesses work, right? A thriving recurring revenue business progresses through 4 distinct stages. The startup phase, this is where you start off, you actually find what works, create that product market fit, and find that go-to-market fit. In the scale up, and roughly it's around like the 10 million ARR, up until that 100 million-ish. This is where you find out what works, you scale that up, and you find an effective and efficient way to do that. This is what we considered as a repeatable, scalable growth. After that, you go into the grown-up. The grown-up is where you focus on winning the right customers, retaining and expanding the customers that you already have, and looking at cost to do that in a very efficient manner. And then enterprise, this is where the Microsoft, Salesforce of the world, this is where you expand the market and increase profitability, and mostly the public companies are. Back to our case, the company is where the blue dot is. They have $12 million ARR, which indicates that they are transitioning from startup to a scale-up phase. This is a very big change for a company, and usually it comes with a lot of hiccups, and this is what we're trying to solve. So this knowledge on where they are allows us now to hone in on common challenges that we tend to see at this stage.
Now, this is a slightly different representation of the growth model. So this is the growth model that you just saw, but what you can see actually on that line is what we call a number of revenue breakpoints. So, as you start up, the first thing you're going to take care of is your pricing and packaging. It's often going to be a founder-led growth. And as you grow, you come to these very pivotal moments in your growth. Now, this is actually a very helpful tool as well if you're sort of diagnosing your company. If you're diagnosing like the company we're talking about, which is $12 million ARR, we don't have to worry about interoperability or durability maybe yet. I'm not saying it's not important. It's not the key focus now. Given that the company that we're looking at is now sort of shifting from startup to scale up, for those type of companies, what we generally see is if there is a problem, usually those are the most common ones. Either they don't have a really good data model in place. Sometimes they have launched too many go-to-market motions too early and spreading their efforts too thin, or there's sort of a lack of repeatable process. So those are usually going to be the things we don't know yet, right? We don't know what the problem is in this particular case, but it gives us an indication to where to look at first, I would say.
So we collected the data. Now let's look at how we analyze the data itself, right? We want to move to the second model, which is the data model. And again, for those of you who haven't seen this, this is the bow tie. We visualize the customer journey touch points across the bow tie from left marketing through, let's say, the BDR, the sales team, and the customer success, all the way to account management, etc. We're superimposing a uniform layer of metrics above that customer journey, right? So let's look at this example. This is the numbers from the company that we're talking about. They have, in a given period, marketing in this case has created 17,800 prospects. And the number of MQLs is 3,026 that they generated, which converted into 666 sales accepted leads. The BDRs take that and create 619 discovery calls for the AM to take those calls and convert and turn them into 68 committed paying customers, which is equivalent of 5.1 million in new ARR. It is 12.1 in existing ARR and 9.2, which is the renewal ARR. And total lifetime value of their existing client base is 43 million. Now, let me ask you in the chat, how many of these metrics do you know and actually collect and analyze for your businesses? Nearly all. Great, Paris. The next thing we do is we want to start looking at the conversion metrics. Looking at conversion metrics, the most obvious one, for example, is like win rate, right? This is the most used conversion metrics, but we like to look at conversion metrics across the different stages of the bow tie. Focusing on conversion metrics allows us to focus on performance and efficiency rather than just looking at numbers. It also allows us to compare between one team or one company compared to their peers. So looking at conversion metrics is the best way for us to actually look and understand how the team, the go-to-market team, the company is performing. So these are the numbers here. We just looked at the volume metrics and we divided 17,000 by 3, brings us to 17%. And you can see here, these are the actual conversion numbers here. Then we benchmark these numbers to industry peers. And we are looking at industry peers with similar characteristics, of course, such as ARR, ACV, and in a lot of cases, the maturity of the company. So we want to compare a startup to a startup and enterprise to an enterprise. Now, these benchmark numbers are available because we have a partnership with a company called Bensight. And Bensight allowed us or invited us to use their platform to collect this data. This data is available, and Sari or Dave, if you can share the link to Bensight. This is open source. We want to invite you to use those benchmarking numbers. In return, we're asking for you to add your numbers there. It's completely anonymized. We cannot track your company's data, but in return, you actually get to see what are the industry benchmark when you want to use that. So this is the tool itself. And I also want maybe Dave, if you can spend 2 minutes just to talk about the partnership program that we recently launched, such as the one that we have with Bensight.
Rock on. Yes, let's do that. So I know a lot of people on the call today are operators who have been live in the chat with people that are CS strategy or RevOps or CRO. Also, a lot of people on the call are service providers or software companies. If you are one of those two things, we would love to talk to you about partnering. If you are a software company who wants to implement Winning by Design frameworks like the Bowtie framework that we just looked at, but other frameworks like Spiced and Rex and RRR, those are frameworks that can be commercially implemented into your software. We'd love to support that, and we have a program for that. Reach out to me, Dave at winningbydesign.com. Or maybe you're a fractional revenue leader or revenue advisor or consultant or trainer, and you would like to use Winning by Design content in your advisory practice. We invite you in. We'd like for you to be using our frameworks and content, and we'd like to make that available to you and to your customers. So reach out to Dominique at winningbydesign.com. If you're one of those two things, take note of these emails because we're about to leave this slide. Dave or Dominique at winningbydesign.com.
Thank you. All right, so what I did here, I took the benchmark numbers from the bench sites site. These are the numbers in like black. So these are the benchmark numbers. The actual company's numbers are the ones below, highlighted. All right, so we're putting it on top of the other. Now we want to see where are we outperforming or underperforming. All right, so what you can see here, the conversion CR1, which is the conversion from we did prospects to MQL, which is 17%, and the benchmark is higher by 2%. MQL to SAL is 22, whereas 20. You can see here CR3, SDRs converting into discovery calls, 93, which is above industry average. 11% win rate compared to 20, the same benchmark. Onboarding 95 compared to 99. 78, which is basically the retention rate, compared to 90 is what we would expect and what we see as industry benchmark. And then expansion, 6% compared to 15, which is the industry benchmark. And let me ask you this, where will you zoom in? And I see, okay, Iveta, 93 versus 80, clear indication of poor qualification. You're skipping ahead. That's the next two slides, so wait with that. All right, I can see Charlie saying CR3 is high. That's right. We'll explore that area. Any other areas that we want to look into or hypothesis of what could be the reasons for those?
Yeah, let's take a little moment for that. Like we don't know yet, right? There can be 1,000 different answers, but any wild guesses? What could be some potential problems with this company? So Iveta already had one clear indication of poor qualification. What else could be happening here?
Let's be more specific, Harry. We see that CR3, the conversion or the handover between SDRs to AEs is above industry benchmark, 93 compared to 80. What could be the possible reasons for that? Then we see that the win rate is almost half of what industry benchmark is. Start to think of what are the possible reasons. This is what we do, right? When we start to look at numbers, we start to create hypotheses, right? My hypothesis here that the win rate is so low, they don't have the right processes in place, right? Maybe they don't have the right people selling. These are the kind of hypotheses we start generating. But of course, we're a science-backed up company, right? We want to look at evidence. We want to prove our hypothesis based on data that we collect. So let's see what we did in this specific case. So one of the regular analysis that we do when we see a problem with CR4 is to look at the sales performance per rep. In this case, how much new revenue each rep brought to the total new business ARR. And look at what we found. This is the actual data of that specific company, right? And what we uncovered here, that out of what, let's say 20, 25, 30 reps, 80% of the revenue came from those top performers, those 5 top performers, which is equivalent to 35% of the reps. So 80% of the revenue came from 35% of the reps. And the rest The rest of the 20% of the revenue came from the rest of the sellers. Now again, here too, let's try to think, what are the possible reasons here? So I said processes, that could be one thing. Some of the sellers are proof that there's no product market fit. There could be, but they're, usually when sellers are able to actually close deals, okay, there's a need for our product. So now we're starting to hone in on a new thing, right? Skills, wrong skills, enablement. These are the areas that we look like. There's a big difference here. Another common analysis that we do is more of an advanced when we combine two types of metrics, whether it's the volume metrics and conversion metrics or conversion metric to other conversion metrics. What we saw there, and we looked at CR3 and CR5 on the left side. CR3 is above, right? 93 compared to 80 industry benchmark. And CR4, the win rate, is below, almost half. So the SDRs, and they are generating more discovery calls than the benchmark, or converting into more calls than the benchmark, but the sellers are closing at half the rate. When we compare, and you can see here that the classical BCG 2x2, right? And we put below, above, and what we see here, the top right corner, is we have CR3, which is above benchmark, and we have below benchmark win rate, which tells us that we need to train the sellers to diagnose on priority. Or in other words, it's probably the SDRs are passing too many opportunities. They're not qualifying enough. They're not qualifying on priority. And the AEs basically are not asking that priority type of questions. And where you land on that 2x2 brings you to different conclusions where the problem actually lies. I see a lot of chat there, Harry, and Dave, you're monitoring that. Another very important analysis is to benchmark to yourself, and either by the different regions and teams, or so let's see what the North American team did compared to the APAC team, or to previous quarters, right? If you're still a small company, let's compare that to previous periods. And by the way, that's how we eliminate the different regions, right? When I always talk about different regions, everybody says, well, our region is completely different. All right, that's fine. Let's compare yourself to the previous reasons. This is what we did with CR7. CR7 is the retention rate. Their retention rate, when we analyzed the data, gave us 78. The benchmark is 90. So we wanted to see the retention rate quarter over quarter in the past 8 quarters. By the way, 8 quarters is a fantastic time period to compare yourself, especially with everything which is going on. We still have, like 2 years back, it was still not better market conditions that we currently are experiencing. So that gives us that perspective looking at the past 8 quarters. And what we see is that in Q1 22 and Q2, they were up there. Fantastic retention rate. But then it started to drop until we reached 78. All right, let's do what could be the possible reasons for retention rate to drop that high. Let's hypothesize. Let's try to figure out what is the possible reason. By the way, when we do that, we always differentiate between external factors and internal factors. All right, incorrect ICP, that's usually an internal factor. And what does that mean, Matt? When we target the wrong ICPs, they're probably going to churn much faster than our regular customers, or the ones that are within our ICP. Any other reasons? Competitor or market disruption, that's right, these are external processes and probably happen somewhere in Q2, Q3, right? Price increases and internal factors, we increase the price for our existing customers, probably happened at around Q2, Q3, or actually, there. And customers that were expected to renew, the pricing did not match the impact that they were getting. So yeah, obviously a lot of different ideas here. This is, by the way, coming back to Harry's comment, this is where the data gets us to a certain point, and we need to use the qualitative data, meaning interviews, and ask them, hey guys, what happened in Q3? What is the possible reason that the retention rate? And through those interviews, we can actually, oh yeah, we increased our pricing, or we lowered the number of the book of business for the CS manager. So all of a sudden because we reduced the headcount, each CS, instead of managing 80 accounts, they're managing 150 accounts. All this are possible reasons that we hear from those interviews that we conduct. Last model.
All right. So I think Rui brought us already on a very interesting trajectory where we used the data model as a lens. We used the trend lines on the data model, and we did that rep analysis. Now, you do want to continue bringing some different lenses to really get a sort of complete vision of the truth. And another one of these lenses is the go-to-market model, what you see in front of you. I think most of you are familiar with this. For the people that see this for the first time, what you're actually seeing here is that depending on the ACV that you sell at, there's going to be an optimal and a most cost-effective way to actually sell to your customers. So if you're selling deals that are sub 5K, you probably want to go with a PLG self-serve motion where existing customers are being helped by a community. If you're selling, let's say, 70K deal, that's probably going to go towards a field sales organization fueled by an ABM approach. Your CSMs are going to be organized per vertical, for example. So this really gives you sort of these different no touch, low touch, medium, and high touch and dedicated touch motions. So, by the way, I'm curious to hear from the people in the audience. Where are you folks mostly located? Or maybe you might have 2 or 3 different go-to-market motions. Who do we have in the audience? Are you more of a no touch, low touch, medium touch, high touch, or dedicated touch? Okay, so we've got Barris as medium, medium and high, medium to high. Okay, fantastic. Now, if we want to go to the next slides, one more. So we've actually done, go back to the previous one. Yeah, so we've actually done a process analysis on this particular company. Right, so you look at the playbooks, you might have to do a few interviews, and this is where you're able to establish, hey, this company is actually having a 2-stage model. That means there's BDRs or SDRs qualifying, they pass it on to AEs. The CSMs have a volume of accounts that they need to manage. That's their go-to-market model. Now, the next thing is you want to understand, like, does this match up to the ACV that they're selling? And this is where we're going to the next slide. And what we actually saw there, that they're selling at 75K ACV. So this is the first moment where you're trying to see, like, okay, there is a mismatch. That could potentially have something to do with, the drops in conversion rates that we've seen before. And just like what Rui did with that retention, you also want to have a sort of an understanding of the time dimension, because this usually also gives you good indications of how we've gotten to that point. And what we've seen with this company is that over the last couple of quarters, so over the last 1 or 2 years, they've seen their ACV going more and more towards enterprise. So while these folks actually had a perfect go-to-market fit, they've actually outgrown their go-to-market fit. And that gives us already like a first indication of things going wrong. Because when you move suddenly from a mid-market to an enterprise, there's a lot going on there. And Rui, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that shift, right? That big shift going from mid-market to enterprise.
Yeah, maybe again, let's use the chat This is a common thing that companies want to go whale hunting, right? They want to close the big deals. There's a lot of advantages of going up market, closing those enterprise segments, but it comes with some challenges that we usually experience. So let's see in the chat if you guys have experienced that, and what are the common challenges that you might encounter when you're going up market.
Yeah.
Higher expectation and enterprise. That's right, Charlie.
I love what Kurt said, different selling motion and skills. When we double click on those skills, what skills are you thinking about? What does an enterprise AE need to have as a skill that a mid-market AE might not particularly need? We've got account management, absolutely. Multi-thread, being more consultative, absolutely. Love that.
Thank you. This is what we usually see, right? So on the left side, mid-market, yeah, disco demo, it's all about who does the disco call, how do they do that, how do you do a demo, is it one-to-many, feature-focused demo, faster cycles, you need to do good negotiation because it's lower ACV, usually they expect the price to drop, and how do you do proper closing, right? How do you get them across that finish line? That's in terms of the process. In terms of skills, how do you do proper discovery? How do you disqualify fast enough and not focus and waste your resources on the wrong deals? It's all about storytelling. This is, by the way, if there's one skill in sales, in customer success, in the world as humans that we need, it's the best skill to master, it's storytelling. So guys, if some of you are enablement people and you're now building the Q3 plan, what are the skills that we want to focus? It's storytelling. That's what you want to focus on. And again, skills, trade, negotiate, right? Because coming back to the process. On the enterprise, all of a sudden we need to add, all of these are right, but we need to, as we wrote in the chat, add stakeholder workshops, right? How do we talk to multiple stakeholders? How do we multi-thread? Do we need to add, we probably do need to add legal and procurement processes throughout the sales process. Potential proof of concept. Do we need to incorporate professional services? How do we do joint impact planning that comes after we close the deal? And the skills, right? Managing the decision process, decision criteria. All of a sudden we're being compared where you need to file RFQs, RFPs, etc. We need to identify multiple stakeholders, right? Because we have the economic buyer, we have the decision maker, economic buyer, CFO, decision maker, usually high up. The users are different stakeholders. So we need to map them and know what each one would want out of our engagement. And of course, throughout the sales process, we need to conduct multiple stakeholders. How do we do that? How do we facilitate different workshops? And again, joint impact planning is a skill by itself that we need to master. So going up market, starting to sell requires, sorry, I forgot that Kurt said, different skill set, different processes. All right, so we talked about possible problems, but we still want to identify the root cause. So we have a list of findings. Let's see how do we identify that root cause. Then now there are several techniques to uncover the root cause. And within by design, we like to use the 5 whys. Here's an example how to use the 5 whys. Yeah. So for example, if we take and we start to build a storyline, we have low reps performance and high churn. Why is that? Because probably the reps lack skills to serve the enterprise. Why? Because we don't have a repeatable process for them to follow. Why is that? Because we're probably applying the wrong go-to-market motion. Why is that? Because we have increased our ICV. We're now targeting and selling to a different segment, and we haven't noticed it. So the actual root cause that we concluded here is that ACV has increased and we have the wrong go-to-market motion. which is the reasons for everything else that we saw. So if we want to fix that root, that problem, we probably want to focus on that. First of all, identify that we're playing in the wrong go-to-market motion. And now let's see how we implement or fix that. Before that, quick recap how we got here. So we identified the causal factors using the 3 standard models of revenue architect. These are not the standard, but 3 out of the 6. These are the ones that we usually use: the growth model, the data model, and go-to-market. And then we looked at trying to conclude what are the root causes. This is where we gather all the finding and start creating that why, asking those questions in order to find that the root causes. And then we start building an implementation plan. And this is where we are right now. This is a classical implementation plan that we provide to our customers. You can see it's very similar to a project management kind of plan. If we start off by fixing the root causes, and then we go and start to create what are the different changes that we need. By the way, I'm going to tell you a secret. Fixing problems that go to market, it's usually in most cases, it's around skills, it's around processes, and it's around tools. So our solutions are usually around these 3 areas, right? It's just a matter of prioritizing and finding what are the right, what skills do we need to master, right? What processes do we need to adapt in order to fix the problems that we identify. So this is how you do that. If you are doing that for your company, you need to build a coalition after that. And we need to have like a impact office or a change office, representatives from the different departments that will drive the changes in their departments. It always requires that support from high up. We are still experiencing sometimes when we work with the enablement team, with the strategy team, the chief operating officer office, when we try to fix that without getting support from high up, basically we can't really manage that change across the company. So this is the end product, that implementation plan. All right, let's talk about next steps. The next steps in terms of, let's focus on errors. Number 1 error that we see, if we do a good enough job, is trying to do too much at a time. Dave is an expert on that, or identifying that problem and fixing those problems. Basically, what we say is that you need to fix those type of problems at the same way you would fix a bug in your product, right? You first of all want to prioritize. Where are you going to focus on? You cannot change everything at the same time, especially when we're talking about if you're a big company, changing change management across tens and hundreds of people, you need to prioritize that change. And we usually see change fatigue if we're trying to do too much. Work in sprints, like focus like how you would fix problems at the products using Agile, right? Let's use the same principles and use those principles in our go-to-market teams. And this is the classical 2x2, right? I think it's this one is a McKinsey framework, right? Easier to do on the right side, harder to do on the left side. Less time to really realize impact, more time to realize impact. Low-hanging fruits on the right, top right. This is where we want to focus on. Big bets, strategic bets on the left side. Harder to do, more time to realize impact. Don't focus on that. It's not worth the efforts. And maybe it's the easier one, but it takes more time to see the impact. So to summarize this slide, prioritize one sprint in an agile manner. Error number 2 is failing to create the executive alignment, as I already alluded earlier. Right? We need to get that coalition, because usually the problems that we see and the problems that we just discussed, go-to-market motion and alignment, we need to have everybody talk, everybody to understand the direction and the vision that we're trying to reach and what we need to actually solve. So we need reps from the different departments to all be part of that change management. And that is it. Last slide, Dave. A bit of a promotion.
Yes, I get to be the commercial break. Amazing. So we have 60 people, 58 people online, including bots. So I want to do a little experiment. When you listen to this way of thinking about analyzing a go-to-market motion and the systematic thinking, the root cause analysis, the, symptom versus cause, on a scale of 1 to 10, just put this in the chat. How well does this align with the way you think? 10 being this aligns with the way I think, 1 being I'm not exactly there, 5 being somewhere in the middle, like, yes, but I also have to hit my quarter. So, maybe I'll get to it. Amazing. Okay. So lots of 8s, 9s, and 10s, and full respect for all of those numbers. We're all running businesses. We all have to hit numbers every month, every quarter, every year. And also we want to architect in a way that that allows us to do that next quarter and next month and next year. So I'm sure a lot of people, I've been having chats in the on the side with a lot of people who've been following Winning by Design for a while. It looks like there's a lot of alignment, including I think some of the bots are weighing in here with a 10. Thank you, bots. I bet you've wondered where this content lives, where, Rowie and Harry referred to a different playbook, a different set of skills, a different motion when we go to enterprise versus mid-market, a different set of skills when we're in mid-market versus SMB. Where does all that information live? It actually lives in a library. Like all of these blueprints, all of these playbooks, all of the methodologies, even some of the how-to skills for how to diagnose, the templates, that all lives in a library. And just recently, we opened that library up. Like we'd actually like you to be able to see the library. You can subscribe to that library. That's the Revenue Architecture Access Pass. And wait, there's more. I'll be a real pitch man here for a second. In addition to access to that library, if you sign up for the Access Pass, you get access to people like Rowie and Harry and all of the other revenue architects at Winning by Design on a scheduled basis for unlimited advisory. Hey, I got to this point with my business. I'm doing what I think I should be doing. Can you take a look at this? Can you advise me on how to do the next step? Where do I find the next blueprint that I need? So advisory and library access pass, that's on the left. Dominique at winningbydesign.com to talk about getting access to that. All right, so that's cool. But also I would like some help. Like I get it that I get it that you're opening the library and that you're letting me phone a friend anytime I want. But I actually want some real humans to show up and look at this with me, shoulder to shoulder, do a project, that kind of that work plan that Rowie showed with all of the dependencies, and help me build executive alignment. Can I get a team to show up and help me? Of course. Like we'd love to do it. We'd love to roll up sleeves and do a GTM analysis. So the URL on the right, winningbydesign.com, GTM analysis workshop. We'd love to run that for you and see if we can be helpful. And those are the 2 calls to action coming out of this. The library and the advisory, or roll up our sleeves with you and look at your business with you. All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. I only lost 3 people during that pitch, so I count that as a win. Love all the energy out there in the chat. Love the energy, Harry and Rowie, from you guys. I really think this is the work that has to be done right now in SaaS.
Thank you, folks. Thank you for joining. Bye, Dave.